Okay, let's get into this. This video is about something very, very specific, and that is that new technologies are coming out with accessories to the phones. And what happens is you have your phone, and essentially, this phone will work with Bluetooth with another device. You've seen smart glasses, you've seen smart headbands, you've seen smart watches. Well, let's talk about that a little bit. The Social Security Administration basically has a system where it reviews you. And the whole idea is they're trying to assess whether or not you are severely impaired. If you're severely impaired and unable to work full time jobs, then you guessed it, they get to go ahead and give you a check of your disability benefits. They are pretty much the sole deciders as to whether or not you get to have this check or not. And so at the end of the day, they have a lot of swing and a lot of pressure with the capacity of their decision. Now, with that said, I want to go through something real quick. Now, we know that there's the advent of video telehealth. It became really popular and really big during essentially, the whole COVID situation. Now, I'm starting to hear chatter about how disabled people who get a check and those who will get a check potentially in the future and those who will not get a check in the future could undergo systematic tests more often as a result of their impairments. We call them CDRs, continuing disability reviews. Now, the bottom line here, just so that you have a full understanding of this, is that, all right, so here's the thing. The technology is getting so good that they can now do full cardio tests from a device that hooks into your phone via Bluetooth. They can scan your brain waves literally with a headband. So, what's happening? All right. They sometimes work with gear, the SSA. And as a result of that, there is a theory out there that the SSA could team up with places like Nike, places like Apple, places that essentially create health and fitness devices. And these health and fitness devices can do all kinds of things. Some of the things they can already do: blood pressure tests, oxygen saturation tests, electrocardiograms, glucose monitors, EEG headbands that track your brain waves. They can test your ADHD, anxiety, your posture sensors, smart insoles that gauge your foot pressure, walking abilities, BMI tests, hydration tests. The point is, there are products coming out where your shoes will have insoles and your hands will have a ring on a finger on each hand. And you guessed it, they will be able to track your range of motion and do full range of motion assessments far beyond what a doctor could normally do. They'll be able to tell you the percentage of your ability to move your arm this way or that way. Now, they can study these things using Bluetooth phone gear. And one of the big things that's going to be used in the future probably has to do with anxiety and depression occurring in the brain. And they'll be able to assess the degree of severity that's occurring within your brain. Think about this. If someone is injured and every time they go to move, their body releases chemicals as a result of pain, and then it shows with your movement that your range of motion and direction of motion shows sympathy. You don't want to move it too much, it hurts, stuff like that, but it shows sympathy towards that particular movement, because you have pain in that area. Then you have good impairment evidence because the machine that was tracking your body movement said, yes, this person is favoring their part of their body as a result of this. But if you don't have constant pain and you aren't really that limited, then you guessed it, the Social Security Administration will know about it. The point is that in the future, you will put a device on that will sync with your phone, which will then sync with the Social Security Disability Assessment application on your phone. Instead of you saying how you are this or that to a doctor, it will know from medical readings as to how severe you actually are. So let's talk about that for a moment. Imagine, if you will, that you want to apply for disability benefits. Okay. So you're like, okay, well, I want to apply for disability benefits. I want to get the process rolling. Cool. All right. So you'll receive a package in the mail from the Social Security Administration. It will include one of these multi-test accessories that syncs with your phone. You are required to wear it for 3 months. After that point, you put it into the little return box and you wait for the Social Security Administration to interpret the data and deliver a decision to you. Now, the way they will likely set it up is that they will take your medical evidence with the data from the device, and your doctor will be able to access, a copy of the readouts from the device. But what I'm saying to you is there's really a couple of main applications here. Number one, people just applying. And number two, people who have already received a check and are continuing to receive a check. So the point is, when it comes to this situation, I'm hearing that essentially new technologies could potentially be used to test those who want to apply and those who essentially are already receiving benefits. Now, I see right there. I see Gussicus 2004. I'm out. Scare tactics. One of the big things that I've noticed about disabled individuals or people that are like, retired on retirement benefits, stuff like that, is that when they are afraid of some new technology, they usually will go ahead and go immediately to the head in the sand, movement. And I get it because it's scary. It's very scary. But if you take a moment and think about it, or they already have headbands that read your brain waves. They already have cameras inside glasses that can interact with what your brain is doing, what you're likely to do, what your brain is likely desiring. They now have chips that can be entered into the brain to go ahead and help quadriplegics move their body parts. So my point to you is, some of you are coming from this perspective as like, oh my God, how could this even exist? How dare they even consider this? Reality check. This technology, lots of it already exists. Like all the things that I said it could do, they already all do that. So the point I'm getting at is, I'm hearing that Social Security benefits for disability benefits will essentially be, you know, tested via using a device. Let's talk about that real quick. So this device, right? So you get it in the mail, you wear it for 3 months, you take it off, you send it back, you wait for a decision. Do you guys see that as an invasion of privacy? Because on one side, the government will say, "Hey, look, you go to the doctor, you put devices on all the time. It might be something for breathing, it might be something for a heart rate, it might be something that helps you sleep, whatever. But you put devices on all the time. And so what's different between this device and a device that you would use at the doctor?" And they've got a good point, because at the end of the day, they're just asking you to wear a medical device, right? And that medical device has Bluetooth, connects with your phone, which then connects to a Social Security program app, which allows them to read the severity of your claimed impairments. So I guess my question to you is, if you feel like it is, in fact, an invasion of privacy, what part of it is the thing that bothers you the most? So let's say it's a keychain. Okay, let's say I'm not saying that they're there yet, but they have wearable items. But let's talk about this. Let's say you had to wear insoles in your shoes, and that could tell the SSA how you walk, what the pressure points on your feet are, what the limitations are. Are you a fall risk? What are the electrical signals being sent throughout your body to your feet? Things like that, right? Let's say they could test that. And let's say that you had wristbands, right? And the wristbands could tell limitations with your hands, difficulty, pain functions, movement, range of motion, fine manipulative grasping, gross manipulative grasping, which is where you like grab a cup. Fine is like typing on a keyboard. Let's say you could do all of those things, right? So then let's say that you wore a headband, and the headband could do a psychological assessment to see how your body's brain waves were reacting to, whatever stimuli you come up against. Okay. Let's say that they had this program and you had to wear these things, and these things would define essentially, how disabled you are. Do you feel like that's fair? Remember when they first came out with the rules restricting people to drink and drive, everybody said it was horrible and unconstitutional, right? And then now, and obviously the roads are a lot more busy now. There's a lot more cars on them, but now we all just kind of accept, yeah, it's a shitty idea to drink and drive because you might hurt yourself, you might hurt somebody else. Do you feel that this device will be able to fairly provide an opinion as to your current medical state? And think about this with me for a second, because this is kind of important. When it becomes medical devices collecting data, above all forms of data that the SSA, like the most holy, the most up there data, is medical machine output data, right? So if you've got an MRI that shows this, if you've got a blindness test that shows that, if you've got, a cardiovascular test that shows this, if you've got, whatever, respiratory test that shows that. That specific evidence is like the golden goo that the SSA loves to use to decide whether or not you are in fact disabled. So the point I'm getting at with this is, what's the difference between something that you wear and they use it to assess you versus sending you to their doctor someplace and having that doctor do a 20-minute interview with you, which seems unfair, and it kind of is, to see if you're disabled. So the question then becomes, right, if you're wearing this stuff, is that going to be the next valuable thing that the SSA uses to prove that you're disabled or prove that you're not disabled? Now, a lot of you guys are thinking about this from the perspective of somebody who's trying to obtain benefits. I think that they're going to be using this for people who are already on benefits, and they're going to be using it as a means to essentially check if you met the severity requirements of what they were back in the day when you were first found disabled. So the idea is basically this, okay? The SSA is going through, they're going through a transition. And me no likey the transition. I was a lot happier with Martin O'Malley doing the stuff he was doing. We haven't really given Frank Bisignano, the new commissioner, a chance to see what he can create. I am curious though, because that guy is a super ultra CEO. As far as super CEOs go, that's a unique animal right now. That's like a banking unicorn. You know what I mean? So I'm curious to see what he comes up with. I'm curious to see what he comes out with. However, as a result of new technology being pushed by the SSA, as a result of new tests being pushed by the SSA, as a result of the new rulings in January, well, it's technically December and January of 2024 leading into 2025, as to how they can vocationally assess you as to whether they believe that you could do a job in the national economy. With all of that in mind, with that entire situation, they are pushing and pushing and pushing to try and have a more fair and accurate system to see if you're disabled. Now, I know something that a lot of you also know. Number one, people seeking disability benefits, there's a lot of them. And it's a slow process. So if I had something like this, then it could speed up the process, because this device via Bluetooth could send data for tests to show whether or not you were disabled. And they would get their golden goose evidence. And then your doctor would say, you're this, and the test would say that. And then your doctor would have to look at those tests and say, okay, got it. But imagine that. Imagine if you wore these Bluetooth devices that sync with your phone for, let's say, 3 months. Imagine that, right? Imagine that. Let's say that they were made to be disposable. They got washed a couple of times throughout the process. But over a 3-month, period, it would have to essentially assess what your capabilities would be. Let's say you had a back problem, right? It would be able to tell us how limited your ambulation was. Do you have a weird gait? Is something going on with it, right? Let's say that you have some sort of issue with your lungs, okay? It would be able to tell us exactly what, oxygen saturation is, what the pressure is inside your lungs. It would be able to tell us all kinds of things, And so at the end of the day, do you feel that this is an acceptable means for the SSA to go ahead and, test you for impairments? I just saw a thing here. Kat said, does missing limbs count? So interesting thing about missing limbs. Everybody's automatically going to go in their brain. They're going to be like, the limb's missing, so you can't assess it. It's gone. The standard for an amputee under the listings, it's very, very specifically written. Okay, it's not like the mental ones where it's like, it could be this, it could have a little of that. It's not like that. It's specifically written, and they say that in order to meet the listing requirements for an amputee, you have to have both your hands from the wrist gone. So here up, both hands, or both of your feet from the ankles down, or your entire leg and half your hip on one side. And my point to you is, you're sitting there going, well, I don't have that much amputation. I don't have that much taken off. I don't have that much blah, 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 blah. But think about this. Your amputation usually causes pain. Your amputation usually causes you to feel like there's a problem or there's some sort of movement issue or you're feeling an electrical signal problem. Imagine the Bluetooth system putting on some sort of band, like a sports band, like a headband around your amputated area. And that would be able to read both, electrically, the signals being sent, what the muscles are doing, how they're contracting, any blood flow issues. It will be able to read those things. So, my feeling about this, to be honest with you, is that I feel like it's very intrusive on the human body. And I feel like it takes out our middleman in this whole thing, which are our doctors. And I'm not a big fan of that. However, I do recognize that these tests could be manipulated by manipulating the coding. Now, think about this. It will become a battle between the Bluetooth digital syncing devices. Your device says this. Their device says this. It could be like a diabetes thing when it comes to, blood sugar, blah, blah, blah. All right, so you get into a battle of the devices. The point I want to push here is that I do not think that this is so far off. I think what this is going to come down to, and I think the thing about it is this: people are going to be less likely to go onto disability benefits in the future. Hear me out on this. Hear me out as to why. Number one, the economy was trampled. Okay, it was trampled by Bidenomics, and I'm not trying to hit on Biden here or whatever, but I think we can all agree. I did a video on it. If you take his 4 years and compare the cost of living adjustment, granted there was COVID, granted whatever, and then you go 13 years before him, that's the same amount of cost of living adjustment increase compared to Biden. A little bit of math, point zero whatever's, but the point is they're pretty equivalent. And so that means it took 3 presidents to equate to 1 president when it comes to leading this country that poorly. And so the thing that I get to with this whole situation, I'm not saying Trump's great either. He spent way too much in his first term, although he was pushed by Democrats to spend that money with COVID. But again, not going there. You know what I mean? Republicans tend to fall for the pressure that Democrats put on them. And then Democrats, they tend to, build on that, even though they were the ones with the shit idea to begin with. They made the Republicans do it, and then they blame the Republicans for it. So I've noticed that. I noticed it's a technique, and it's a very, very smart technique that the Democrats use. They're very good at it. So I think it's pretty interesting that they're able to effectively do it. And to be honest, the American public, they don't usually recognize it. So with that said, with this type of situation, do you feel that essentially at the end of the day, okay, so let's imagine a scenario. Okay, so let's do like an Einstein-oriented theoretical. We're gonna think and dream in our head as to what this could potentially be like. Let's say that you have been on disability benefits for 20 years. Okay, you get a package in the mail. The package is from the Social Security Administration. The package has for your particular impairments. Let's say it's an impairment related to cognitive functioning, right? You have anxiety, depression, let's say multiple personality disorder, whatever. It could be any combination. You could schizophrenia, it could be any of them. Okay. And they request that you wear 2 wrist monitors, right? They're like fuzzy little bands that go on your wrists that talk to the phone. They might not even need to talk to the phone. They might have their own Wi-Fi built into it, or cellular systems built into them. And also a headband, right? A headband. And basically, that's it. Now, as a part of this, you knowing full well that you were the most stressed, had the most issues mechanically from a mental standpoint with doing stuff, activities at work. You were the worst when you used to work. But now that you've not been working for 20 years, now that you've not had to like show up on time, deliver on time, get everything done at the beginning of the day. Friday, you have to work on stuff. Saturday, Sunday, clean the house, do your laundry. Now you haven't had to like live in that world for 20 years. So you've gotten a lot better, right? Now the SSA shows up with this device in a box and essentially says, hey, we need you to put on these, Bluetooth, cellular, reading devices. And these reading devices are going to go ahead and assist us with what's called your CDR, continuing disability review. Now, normally you get a CDR like a 1-year interval, 3-year interval, 5-year interval, 7-year interval, or they don't bother. Okay. It's like, and they don't, when somebody's like an amputee, you know what I mean? Like both their hands are gone, or quadriplegic, like they ain't gonna bother. You know what I mean? Why the hell would they bother? They're not gonna check in on you, right? But if somebody like has anxiety from back in the day, they'll bother. They'll check in. So the main thing is you put this stuff on, they want you to wear it for 3 months, and then you take it off, and then, you get an alert on your phone that says, you have to wear these, otherwise they're going to stop your benefits, right? Or they're going to restrict your access to your benefits, or they're going to do something, you know what I mean? Some punishment that they have. They might not start right into essentially that idea of, essentially benefits being taken or reduced, but they might, it's a warning, another warning, you got to do this, we're going to cut it off. You know how they do it. You know what I mean? They space it out. Real quick, Lucinda Bragg, thank you for doing the appreciation membership. Love the horsey picture. That's awesome. Very, very cool. So imagine now for a moment, okay, that you get this box, you put on your Bluetooth cellular devices and your headset, right? Your little workout band or whatever. Now that workout band has the ability to do whatever the anxiety test is or depression test that they would use from that device, right? And what if that band could ask you questions from the doctor that the SSA is using? So like, it'll have a little speaker in it. The speaker will ask you questions and then you will answer them. It could be a live doctor. It could be a pre-recorded, medical interview thing where you have to interact with it. Okay, obviously artificial intelligence will be able to do that just fine. Then what happens is after you wear it for 3 months, they've been able to assess brain waves. They've been able to assess chemical releases. They've been able to assess, whether you're crying, whether you're upset, whether you're okay, what's going on. And it all gets sent into the SSA. And they begin a reading process where all the data gets reviewed. They have a medical consultant, sign off on certain things saying, you are this disabled, you're not this disabled. They had this number reading, they had that number reading. And then at that point, you get a decision. That to me is very likely to be the future of Social Security benefits. And hear me out as to why. Let's assume magically, I don't believe it at all for 1 second. Let's assume magically, okay? All right, magically, that the SSA wants to create a neutral situation that either keeps the right people on or gets the right people or gets certain people off, right? Okay, let's assume that they're neutral, okay? Although, obviously it feels like I have a visceral reaction to even saying that. I can feel my body being like, So let's assume that. And let's assume that throughout that process where they're testing you using these Bluetooth devices, they basically feel that you are no longer the disabled person that you were, right? So let's say you had the benefits for 20 years, you put on this gear, you're no longer the disabled person you were. Then you begin the appeal process, right? You appeal into reconsideration. And they send you another package. And this other package, they tell you, okay, we want you to wear it for 3 months. And, if you're unwilling to wear it, we're going to cut off the benefits, right? Punishment. So then the question becomes, can you opt out of them? Or are you required to wear them? Can you have a religious thing that says, okay, I don't believe in this sort of thing, I'm not going to wear this stuff? Or is it one of those things where you've got to wear it to receive your monthly check? I think what's interesting about this situation is that it brings up a lot of ethical questions. You have some people who, to be fair, don't know how to work anymore. Like if they haven't been working for 15 to 20 years, asking that person to consistently wake up, get on the computer and work and do functions is just not realistic. They have to go through like a ramping up process to be able to go back to work. The SSA doesn't do a lot of ramping up process. They're just like, hey, we're going to take away your benefits. You go figure out what you're going to do. So if they had a program where they use these Bluetooth devices to assess your mental state, your anxiety, to assess your physical state, your respiratory, cardiovascular, your musculoskeletal, whatever issues you have, they would need to have a ramp up program to try and teach people of how to get back to work. Now, with that said, I think this is important. I think this is very important. At the end of the day, we have to ask ourselves, what jobs are there going to be in the future? You have a lot of these big time billionaires who are mass investors into the Fortune 500 companies, right? Things that they're doing, buying technology before the Fortune 500 company does, and then selling it to the Fortune 500 company. So the whole idea here is this. These types of billionaires are saying, okay, look, a lot of these Fortune 500 companies are service providers that are essentially going to be replaced by artificial intelligence. And as a result of that replacement of artificial intelligence, it's going to go ahead and remove a bunch of these Fortune 500 companies because we're no longer going to have a need for their services. I think that's true. I think that's true. But inherent with that is the problem that a lot of jobs are not going to exist in the future that we're really accustomed to. And the entire point of Social Security is to say, is this person able to work a full-time job? Like if you were like back it down to like one particular item, the SSA is asking, could this person work a specific job in the national economy? And so as a result of that, with this whole situation as it is, we then look to the, job market and we say, okay, well, how many of these jobs exist in the job market? And then once we're looking at this job market, and we go, okay, cool, very good. Look at this, look at that, look at this, look at that. Okay, good, good, good. Maybe they could do this job, and this job. The problem is now a lot of those jobs, they don't exist and they're not going to exist ever again. AI is going to take over and that's it. And that means the use of a human being in a vocational setting just decreases massively. We don't need them to do stuff. That's a weird thing. So think about that. What you're saying is we don't need a human to do this industry vocational work stuff anymore. Real quick, Puerto Rican Mike did a $5 donation. Let me put a little heart on that. I have a spinal cord issue for degenerate discs. How can it prove it? How can I prove it? Also, I walk with a cane because I have no nails in my ankle. Can it detect that? So yeah, this technology will be able to detect essentially how you're feeling pain, how your body is sending out electrical signals, how you're having difficulty with walking, how you're having difficulty with range of motion with your arms, range of motion with your body movement, including your back. It'll be able to detect a lot of those things. And it'll be able to detect when you feel like you are in pain, when you feel that shooting pain from up here to down there. It'll be able to detect that electrical signals sharing. So what's really interesting about this, just to kind of like clarify, is that this technology is going to be, in my opinion, heavily used by the Social Security Administration to decide whether or not you get to get benefits or keep benefits going forward. Lucinda Bragg did a $5 donation. Super appreciate it. Love it. Love a little pair with the little dumbbells there. That's awesome. Little pump and iron. That's awesome. Now, here's some things I want to ask you about when it comes to this situation. Do you feel when they use these devices that this would remove certain legal rights that you have that you want to hold on to? Okay, let me give you an example, right? So let's say that you are traditionally assuming that you would go to the doctor, you get to choose your doctor, you get to choose what test your doctor is using, you get to choose when you do those tests, you get to choose how much you want to partake in those tests, you get to choose what medications you're going to take, you get to choose how long you're on those medications. You got all these choices, right? You can say, I got this choice, right. But do you feel that by the SSA one day using, these Bluetooth cellular devices that can read what's going on in your body, do you feel that removes certain legal rights that you have? I feel it does. Like, I feel like it would remove certain legal rights that you have as to, how you want to partake in the medical process of, essentially. And I mean, look, I want to clarify something because I'm going to get in trouble with this if I don't. I was about to say participating in the medical process to become cured. First of all, obviously, okay, just to be fair, if you go talk to any psychologist, psychiatrist, behavioralist, nobody really ever gets cured of their mental impairments to a definitive degree. It's not so much as a definitive, we know we beat cancer, the cancer's never coming back because of this, because we like removed the thing that it was grown from, and it only grew from that, and it only grows from that. In the mental arena, right? Anxiety, depression, panic attacks, schizophrenia, schizoaffective, whatever. What a personality disorder, intellectual quotient, number that's low, high, whatever. Okay. Nobody ever really gets cured. Like have you ever sat back and thought about that? I was sitting back and thinking about that the other day. How many of you have gone and worked with a therapist or a psychologist or a psychiatrist, behavioralist, a neurocognitive, specialist? How many of you have worked with some sort of mental physician, some sort of mental master's level provider, and have been cured of your mental impairments? Because I don't think we're going to get one person in here saying that they were cured. I don't. I don't think it's going to happen, because it's just not going to happen. No, none of you are going to say that. So, at the end of the day, I think, to me, what the issue here is that when it comes to mental assessment tests, right? How bad do they think your anxiety is? When did you have the most striking and just massive explosive feelings inside your body when your PTSD was at its strongest, right? So, and think about that, like PTSD, like this machine that reads your brain. It's just, it's glasses you could wear. It could be a headband that you wear. It's a Bluetooth cellular device, delivers information to the SSA. Imagine, right, that device can essentially gauge how bad your flashbacks, nightmares, and night terrors are for your PTSD with clarity, to know specifically on the leveling system how severe you are, right? So you got down here, you get the minor, you get the moderate, you get the severe / marked, or the extreme, right? So, the point that I'm getting at with this is that it will be able to give you a numerical understanding of where on this severity scale you are. The amazing thing is, like, when I talk with people, and people are like, I have really, really bad anxiety. And I ask them, when was the last time you were inpatient at a mental facility as a result of your anxiety? And then a lot of them go to me and they're like, what do you mean inpatient? I'm not crazy. What do you mean inpatient? I'm not that bad. What do you mean inpatient? You mean with the people who are, thinking about this stuff? I mean, what do you mean? Wow, what do you mean? And I get that. And what's interesting about it is that when people say that to me, it tells me that, number one, there's a stigma. Number two, they don't believe themselves to be in the arena of somebody who's mentally unsound at that level. But think about that. The SSA likes to see inpatient mental treatment, because usually that means there was a crisis. And the crisis was that your medications in combination, your therapy in combination, you're hanging out with your buddies in your support group in combination wasn't enough. You went off the rails, shit hit the fan. It is what it is. And so as a result of that, this is a situation where, to be very fair, if they're able to assess and figure out on this severity scale, minor, moderate, severe, and extreme, where you are, then to me, it kind of feels like they'll use that. And then over time, they'll culturally change how they feel about the numbers in the system. And then they'll start modifying the numbers, like how they do with your cost of living adjustment, or how they update the listings to make things more severe for people to be found disabled. Real quick, Puerto Rican Mike did a $10 donation. Let me go check this out real quick. My doctor did an MRI, and you see that I'm not lying. I have a big medical folder proving my disability in my back and ankle. That's not good enough. Not doing it if I'm 57 years old. See, but that's the thing. Puerto Rican Mike points out a really good point here. He's got an MRI, and the MRI shows the main problem. And that's the interesting thing, is that this device will be similar in the category of proof as that MRI. Think about that for a moment. You went in, you got an MRI, the MRI said, here's the problem. Now, this device will be able to tell if somebody has movement limitations because they're wearing it, range of motion limitation, ambulation limitation, right? Gait difficulty, shock issues with transmission of electrical signal from your back down to the bottom of your feet, where you're feeling that shooting sensation. This will be an accompaniment to traditional imaging radiographic evidence that we use for Social Security benefits. And what's interesting here, and I think Puerto Rican Mike points out something really good, is that traditionally the Social Security Administration has moments in time evidence. Think about that. I mean, how many of you have undergone a test that you wore something for 3 months, right? I mean, some of you might have had images for that day. Some of you might have had something on your body for a week. Some of you might have had something for 2 weeks. But how many of you had to wear a medical device for 3 months? And some of you will say, yes, I did. Or you'll say, oh, I had to wear a colonoscopy bag. I had to wear this. I had to wear that, whatever. The point is that I'm getting at is that this little device that the SSA will one day use will be just like any other medical device, except it will read what's going on in your body. Now, the next question I have for you, and I think this is a really important one, and look, remember, I'm doing this video not to scare you. I'm doing this video so that you become educated on what the new technologies are that are coming out and how they work. Just go look up Nike. You're going to see a bunch of Bluetooth gear that syncs with your phone that tells you all kinds of stuff about your body. I mean, go look at the iPhone, the iWatch now. Holy cannoli, that thing. Literally, doctors tell you, if you got a heart condition, you got to go buy an iWatch, because that's all the readout data. You just click some buttons, sends it right to your doctor. It's the same gig. It's the same stuff. Go look at the stuff that measures brain waves. Single point cardiovascular tests. I mean, man, we're moving and grooving very quickly towards this. So the point of this is not to and even if it makes you upset right now to hear this, this is preparing you. You're ahead of it. There's other people watching other stuff like Fox News, CNN, whatever, but they're not preparing to protect their benefits. So I guess my question to you is, do you feel people should have the right to reject the devices used on your claim, whether you're trying to keep your benefits or obtain benefits for the first time? I think people should legally have that right, because they have a legal right to go ahead and essentially reject other forms of treatment, other forms of medical equipment. Mark Vietti, thank you for the $20 donation. That's amazing. Mark Vietti said, great info. Thank you, Walter. And I really appreciate it. Guys, when you say nice things, it honestly pumps me up. And throughout the day, my phone will ring, 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 and bing, bing, bing. And people will say such mean shit about me, who I am, what I'm about, what's going on. And I'm going to be honest with you, some nights I don't want to go live, because I just I have to emotionally remove the baggage of reading mean shit about me and put it in the corner. And then the next day I wake up and I'm like, okay, let's ramp it up. Let's get it in. Let's go. And let me tell you why this is important. This video will be copied by a bunch of other YouTube channels. That's what always happens to me. They take my voice, put it in a voice machine, and then reproduce the video with different images that's not images of me. It is what it is. I can't stop that stuff. But the point is, this information is something that you got to use. You know what's coming up, so you've got to go ahead and prepare for that. All right. So once again, I think people should have the legal right to not use these devices going forward, because you already have that legal right to deny them to do certain medical procedures to you. Okay. Now, I want to take an example real quick. Okay. Let's say you're an individual, who essentially, right, is trying to get benefits. The box shows up at your door, or actually when you're filling out the application online, you can click, yes, I want to do this. And I'll let the devices be put on my body for 3 months. No, I don't want to do this. I don't want the devices. I just want you to rely on medical evidence and send me to your SSA doctor, your CEME, consultative examination medical expert. Okay, cool. Okay. Here's what I think the SSA will do, because the SSA is brilliant when it comes to manipulating the culture of the events to make it so that you want to do something in particular over something else. Okay, let me give you an example. When the SSA wants you to do something, they'll find a way to make the alternative option more difficult, take longer, be a pain in the butt, whatever. They'll find a way to make the other option suck so that you end up doing what they want you to do. Okay. This, I think, will be like that. And hear me out as to why. I think they will give priority claim adjudication speed. So, like how fast for them to decide your claim if you wear those devices. So, you wear the devices for 3 months, you take them off, you send them back. In 5 months total time, you get a ruling. But for people who don't use this system, I can see them being like, well, we got to do it the slow way. It's the old way. It takes a lot more people. 15 months, 18 months. That's, hey. Then all of a sudden it creates the culture that you're going to choose to use these devices that send Bluetooth cellular signals back to the SSA because you're going to get a decision much faster. Now, think of this. A lot of people basically go into a situation where, to be fair, a lot of people go into this situation where, to be fair, right? They're coming off of short-term disability benefits. They got like 6 months on short-term disability benefits. They're coming off of long-term or they're going on to long-term disability benefits. If you could get an adjudication at the initial filing level within 5 months, and you're looking at this thing going, hey, is this going to happen? Is this not? Then you're going to choose that option, right? Because you're thinking, maybe I could go back to work, maybe I can't. Let me see what this device uses. Let me see what this device says, yada, yada. Now, where are these devices going to pop up first? They're going to pop up, these cellular Bluetooth devices that read, brain waves, right? Cardiovascular, respiratory, musculoskeletal, range of motion. They're probably going to pop up in the workers' comp arena and the LTD arena, okay? They're probably going to pop up there because when it comes to their assessment as to whether or not you could do certain movements, it'll probably be used by the workers' comp, companies, by the LTD companies to assess whether or not you truly are the injured person that which you claim you are. They'll probably get sucked into the personal injury field and also the Medicare field. Now, think for a moment about this. What if, for example, Medicare requested that you put these on to figure out what program or what plan would be best for you, or to figure out what types of things and treatment they want to use for you? Real quick, Puerto Rican Mike did a $5 donation. Let me put a little heart right there. The SSA told me I have a very clean file. What does that mean? Usually what a very clean file means is that it's not a file that's chock-a-block with a bunch of unnecessary medical documentation, but it's medical documentation that is specific to the impairment, and there's not a lot of random forms or random things that are in there. It's the classic forms that they use. They have exactly the medical documentation they need, and they decide the claim based off of that, and they retain the claim based off of that. So imagine if Medicare came to you and said, look, we want you to wear these devices, or any health insurance group. It could be life insurance, health insurance, Medicare, Medicaid, whatever. And they want to assess what type of surgery they want to give you if they want to offer it to you. I think at that point, you would run into the issue because all of a sudden now you're wearing medical devices that will decide and define how severe you actually are and what kind of treatment they're going to give you. Because remember, a lot of people want life-saving treatment, but they don't always give that to you if they assess your body and say, man, we don't want to give you it. We don't want to pay for it. I want to point something out. There was a lawsuit, okay, that happened where car companies would collect data about the drivers, and then they sold that data essentially to, a giant, LexisNexis-based company that took that data. And then once it had ownership of what your driving was like, they then sold it to health insurance groups to go ahead and let them make a decision as to whether or not they wanted to cover those people because of their driving style, etc. They also sold it to other places, that basically were willing to go ahead and buy the information. This is something that I think will be a problem with this type of equipment and technology in the future. And here's my reasoning as to why. Okay, let's say, for example, you wanted to go ahead and get a certain healthcare option, and they send this stuff out to you, and you put these devices on, right? So you put them on your wrist, you put it around your neck, you put it around your forehead, you put them on your ankles. Right now, you've got a Bluetooth cellular up to the cloud, tells exactly medically what's going on with you. Okay. The point that I'm getting at with this is some health insurance might not want to cover you because they'll have instant access to a lot of assessment as to what's actually going on with your body. And that's, I think a little bit of a scary problem. Now, with that said, just so you guys know, I don't cover Medicare. I don't talk about health insurance stuff. I did partner with this group right here, boop, chapter. So askchapter.org/ there it is, disability. They gave me my own little thingy right here. Disability, obviously, because I'm the most viewed and subscribed to disability attorney in America. But if you want them to like give you a tune up on your Medicare plan, or, essentially what you have right now, I'm terrible at calling insurance companies and like beating them up on price, getting the best price for the next year, whatever. But it's a free call. You call them, they'll work with you to go ahead and figure out what would be a really great Medicare plan for you. What would be something that you can use, save money on, et cetera, for your impairments, medications, et cetera. But with that said, imagine if you put these Bluetooth devices on and it automatically would find who would be willing to cover you. They automatically would find who essentially would be willing to spend money on your body. You ever think about that? Think about that for a moment. Just with me for a moment, okay? Imagine you were like, sitting there trying to break down essentially what health insurance was. Health insurance is the marketplace of people who are willing to spend money on your body. You ever think about that? I mean, including your brain and obviously the thoughts that come out of your mouth as a result of your brain, blah, 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 blah. But you ever think about that? It is the marketplace of companies who are willing to spend money on your body. Did you ever sit back and think about Social Security disability benefits for a moment? That is the government backing a program that is willing, so long as you're severe enough, to spend money on your life. Now, of course, you already paid for it in SSDI benefits, and it's your money, although it's not really, because they take ownership of it as a taxation. But at the end of the day, you're sitting there going, hey, wait a minute. What is it really? What it is really is that the Social Security Administration is a company set up inside the government to decide whether or not you deserve money that you've paid for. And that's a scary thought. You ever sit back and think, why do they have all this power? Why don't I just get to keep the money, and then I put so much into like some sort of special healthcare plan, and then if things go bad, I'll just be privately covered under a specialty healthcare plan, and I'll have the LTD benefits for the rest of my life? Why not? Now, here's the weird part. If you guys ever look at this, the amount of money you would spend on FICA taxes put into, for example, an LTD, like an LTD benefit plan for disability benefits in case you became disabled for the rest of your life, most LTD plans give you more money over the rest of your life than your SSDI benefits. And you don't even have to pay as much usually over the expanse of your life. So, a lot of people hear this argument. They're like, privatize is terrible. Go look at LTD rest of your life plans, the cost of them compared to essentially the cost of SSDI benefits as you pay over your entire lifespan. I was sitting there thinking about that the other day, and I realized, holy crap, that is really, really scary. Puerto Rico Mike did another $5 donation. Let me go put a little heart here. I have a clean file and going to my therapy for my back. I will refuse it, right? Going to therapy for your back? No, you keep going to therapy. Puerto Rico Mike, you go to therapy, you get assessment. They see what your range of motion is. They look at what your ambulation ability is, your walking ability, right? And then they keep it up, to see how you've moved over the trajectory of your life. What's the longitudinal line? Are you getting better? Or are you getting worse? No, you keep going to therapy. You keep going and doing that stuff. Now, with that said, wow, we had a huge donation from Ron McMullen, a $49.99 donation. Let me put a big heart next to that one. That's amazing. He said, I hardly get a chance to watch live. Well, it's amazing to see you. I haven't seen you in a little bit, but Ron McMullen back. Please, everybody thank him, because that was a massive, massive donation. Absolutely amazing. So I want to talk about essentially where this whole thing is going, because I am connected with people who like to feed me info, and I'm connected with the political circuit now because of obviously the channel being what it is. When you have over 250,000 subscribers and millions of views every single month, politicians, they communicate with you. What I've realized is this, okay? Politicians don't know how Social Security works for the most part. They just don't. The younger ones that are in the House, they're too young to know. The older ones in the House, they're getting retired to jump ship. They know that there's a trust fund problem. It's going to be bad. The older ones in the Senate and even the younger ones, that tends to be your more educated politicians. And senators tend to have a bit more of a classical education and they build on it and they spend their whole life studying. Although we do get some senators, I will admit, we get some senators where I'm sitting there, I'm just like, how in the hell did you make it into that chamber? But at the end of the day, they tend to have general understandings as to how Social Security works. And they are very scared of the whole trust fund problem that's coming up. I foresee this technology being used as a quasi fix for their arguments to put it in place to try and reduce the amount of people who are trying to get benefits. And hear me out as to why. If you use this technology to define if somebody was disabled, you could very quickly adjudicate whether or not they were severe. Whether or not the assessment was fair, that's a different question. Now, if, for example, you used it on people who were found disabled back in the day, they could use that as a program to go ahead and start removing people from the benefits. But there's a problem. They would have to, as politicians, find a way so that those people being removed from benefits wouldn't cause them political harm by creating this giant group of people that would vote against them. That's what the politicians are really worried about. If they hurt Social Security benefits, will groups be able to be formed as a result of that change that people don't like that will be used to vote out those politicians? That's what they're worried about. All right. With that said, we've talked about essentially these different technologies. Please do actually go look up some of the new Bluetooth technologies that work with phones. They do all kinds of things. They do glucose monitors, electrocardiograms, oxygen saturation tests. They have ADHD assessments. They have posture sensors, smart insoles that check how you walk. They have, BMI tests, hydration tests. They got all kinds of stuff. And a lot of that is being fed from the fitness industry. But don't forget, Medicare, workers' comp, LTD benefits, health insurance going forward, those groups are going to heavily use this technology. And we are not far away from it because it already exists. The tech already exists. It just hasn't been integrated into these different massive industries. But, 2 to 3 years, they're going to be using it. It's just like you putting a chip in your car, and the chip then tells the insurance company if you're a good driver or a bad driver. They're going to put this on your body, and it's going to tell them whether or not you are disabled or not. And that's a very, very, very spicy thing. I wanted to bring it to your attention. I don't want it to scare you. I want you to be aware, because a lot of you guys go into this like, oh, I'm freaking out mode. No, learn about the technology that's coming. Prepare yourself as such for it. It's the whole point. Like, let me point something out to you. There are channels that all they do is talk about future increase, massive boost, stimulus, blah, 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 COVID, blah, blah, all that junk, right? And they make people feel okay. They make people feel pretty good. That to me is a disingenuous channel. I know some of you know those channels very well, and that's fine. It's what it is. But I will say this. I would rather you be prepared for what's actually coming than drooling over future stimulus increases. Reality. If you have the reality, you can prepare your other evidence to be a counter tool against this future technology. Attorney Walter Hnot, you have a wonderful night. I am going to be going live after this to answer questions for free about disability law. Please remember to like and subscribe. Please say howdy to our members and those who donated. Some big donations there, and I really appreciate it. I am setting up a stage. I'm going to be giving you a guided tour of it very soon. And actually, I can show you. Now, remember, not all of this gear is mine. Okay, so a heads up, not all of it's mine. I have been collecting audio gear for around, just to be clear, 30-something years. Okay. And so as a result of that, the stage is almost ready where people are going to be able to perform halftime shows that are Social Security recipients. And the cool thing is, in between the shows, you'll actually see a video of somebody who's on Social Security benefits performing their thing. Could be guitar singing, just singing, could be whatever, could be anything. And what's cool about that is that it will help you guys see what your community members are up to and the amazing talent that the Social Security pool has. With that said, please remember to head over to Google, type in Disability Resolution Law Firm, throw some stars up there if you want. I go live on Mondays and Thursdays. It's Thursday night. I'm going to go live directly after this and answer questions for free. And also, please remember, if you want a 1-hour consultation where you get access to my brain for an hour uninterrupted, there's a mini contract below. Also, remember, if you want to have Medicare questions, don't call me. Call them. I don't do Medicare questions. Chapter does it. I partnered with them. I want to have them on the channel more to do more discussions about the future of Medicare. If you want to get a tune-up on your particular Medicare plan, give them a call. Or, for example, if you want to find out about, that $14.6 billion fraud that's happened in the healthcare industry and whether or not you'll be affected by it, give them a call. They're following it closely. I'll catch you a little bit later. We'll rock and roll from there. Attorney Walter Hnot, give me about 10 to 15 minutes, and I'll start answering questions in the next video for free. Thanks so much. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.